Welcome to the first Inside Albania of 2024. While many of us enjoyed a well-earned rest, the same cannot be said for politicians in Albania and the region, and they certainly kept us on our toes over Christmas and New Year. This week, I am going to be speaking to a Greek former ambassador and an MP from the ruling New Democracy Party on Kosovo recognition and Spain's recent move to recognise Kosovo's passports. I'll also be interviewing a Belgian MP on Albanians in Brussels and what the Belgian European Council presidency means for us here in Albania. Now, as of the 1st of January, Kosovo's citizens were granted visa liberalisation, finally giving them the right to travel throughout the Schengen zone without the need for a visa. Spain, however, one of the 5 EU non-recognisers of Kosovo's independence, initially said it wouldn't follow other countries as it doesn't recognise the passport. But in a U-turn earlier this week, it announced it would recognise Kosovo passports, but insisted that this does not equate to recognition of the country's sovereignty. Now, this did come as a bit of a surprise, and it also led to quite a lot of speculation that Spain could be next in line to recognise Kosovo. Many of us thought Greece would be next, as relations between the two countries have improved and even intensified in recent years. Furthermore, in my December interview with Kosovo's Deputy Prime Minister, Besnik Bislimi, he said Kosovo knows what it will take for Greece to recognise it. Now, I wanted to find out more about exactly what it would take for Greece to recognise Kosovo and what the Greeks think about Spain's steps. I have the great honour today to be joined online by retired Ambassador Georgios Iafantis. Good afternoon, welcome to Inside Albania, and thank you for making time to speak with me today.
Good afternoon, thank you for having me.
Now, I want to dive straight in the burning question, why does Greece not recognise Kosovo's declaration of independence?
Well, there are some pretty good reasons. Greece sees Kosovo as the result of an armed intervention by NATO, of an armed intervention against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, or what was left of it in the early 90s. So Greece has a bad precedent on similar cases, especially in Cyprus, when in 1974 Turkey invaded and carved out the northern part, occupied part of Cypriot Republic of Cyprus, and seeks recognition, international recognition for this state that Turkey has created over there. So this precedent, legal, moral, and political, is the main reason. It's a matter of principle for Greece that does not allow to recognize Kosovo as long as Kosovo and Serbia do not resolve their differences and there's no mutual acceptance. That is, acceptance by Serbia that Kosovo is an independent state and that the borders there are definitive and mutually agreed. This is the main reason.
But you said there were a couple of reasons. So what other reasons are there behind it, aside from the issue with Serbia, the fact that you have good relations with Serbia? Is there anything else that is maybe making things a bit more difficult for Greece to recognise Kosovo?
If I were to elaborate a little bit more, there is no point for Greece, politically speaking, to recognize Kosovo and have the so-called Republic of Northern Cyprus. Mm-hmm. We wish to improve relations between Greece and Kosovo, but not at the expense of the relations existing already between Greece and Serbia. So we try to find sort of compromise, which does not depend from Greece, really speaking, but depends from the two parties involved in this conflict, that is Kosovo and Serbia. The other reason is that Kosovo is predominantly an Albanian state, and Albania, the state next door to Kosovo and next door to Greece, lately has been giving a constant pain in the neck to the Greek foreign policy regarding the rights of the minority there. Minority leaders are arrested, and their property rights are jeopardized. And once they try to protect them, they are arrested. And also the long pending issue between Greece and Albania regarding the exclusive economic zone, the delimitation. Greece has suggested to send the whole issue to the Hague International Court or to the Hamburg Court, which are, the appropriate institutions to solve differences on such issues. But Albania is an evasive, has adopted an evasive tactic, most probably dictated by Ankara, and that's something that makes things worse. Of course, Kosovars are not responsible for the acts of the Albanian political leadership, but it doesn't help.
But they're separate countries. They're separate countries. Okay, ethnically they are the same. And so how can Greece or Athens say, okay, we have problems with Albania, long-standing issues, things aren't going too well at the moment, so therefore we're going to punish Kosovo? How can that work? Because it's just ethnicity that's shared.
We do not punish Kosovo. We do not punish Kosovo. We have the other issue I mentioned before, which is a major issue of principle, and principles are, of course, can be accommodated by some creative approach, but politically speaking, the Greek governments cannot turn to the Greek public opinion and to the Cypriot public opinion and say, listen, we will fully recognize Kosovo the very same moment they have bitter issues with Albania, because on both sides, between Kosovo and Albania are ethnic Albanians, aren't they? And there's a real osmosis. But this is a political issue. It's if the Greek-Albanian relationship were to improve, that would help, but not necessarily. The real issue is that Greece cannot proceed to the full and fully recognize Kosovo without without the acceptance on this issue, without the consent of the Cypriots of the Republic of Cyprus.
You mentioned
because that would be a bad precedent.
You mentioned Ankara, and it's no secret that Albania has very good relations with Turkey. Kosovo does as well. Is that something which concerns Greece? Maybe Ankara is interfering, the hand of Ankara is guiding certain things that could be impacting the relationship with Greece. Is that a concern, do you think, for Athens?
Well, it is, but it's natural. All countries, and Turkey is no exception, try to interfere, especially in the Balkans, trying to interfere and create connections and alliances, formal or informal, against each other. So it's nothing new in the region. But generally speaking, it doesn't help.
No.
It doesn't help, especially when we have Turkey that promotes an aggressive Islamism, Sunni Islamism, and Islamic revival all over the region. They are building mosques at more than everything else. They are building more mosques in both Albania, Kosovo, and even in the northern Macedonia than planting trees.
Yes.
And that's something that the Greek public opinion notices.
Now, I want to ask, you've had a long career in diplomacy, so I value your insight on this. Spain's decision was somewhat unexpected recently to recognise passports. And I wanted your view on what you think was behind that. And then second part of the question being, do you think, regarding what's happened with their agreements with Catalonia recently, do you think they could be perhaps next in line to recognise Kosovo?
Well, Spain had a problem with Catalonia, as you mentioned. They were afraid that Kosovo might be a precedent for the secession and international recognition of the secession of Catalonia. It seems that the current Spanish government is not that much afraid of such a turn of such a scenario anymore. But it's a decision by the Spanish authorities. It's not to me to judge it. I mean, if they think that everything is okay with them, of course they can recognize Kosovo. I do not think that Greece has to dictate its fears to other EU partners regarding this issue. We have separate reasons, particular reasons, not to proceed to the recognition, which is, after all, it's not a big issue. I mean, Kosovo and Greece can live happily together, and they live happily together without full recognition.
But it then impacts Kosovo, who wants to join the EU, who wants to join the NATO Partnership for Peace, who has these aspirations to join the Council of Europe. This non-recognition does pose an obstacle to these.
Well, not really. I mean, the real impediment, the real problem is not the non-recognition of Greece and Cyprus. The real issue is whether Kosovo is its economy, the transparency of its institutions, the democracy in Kosovo makes eligible this new state for EU membership. And on this issue, believe me, you will have many other EU member states object. Just see what is going on with Turkey, with Albania, even with Moldova, that is other candidates for EU. Being a candidate is a good thing, but it may take some time before being accepted as full member. Turkey, for example, has been waiting in the antechamber for almost half a century. And this is not a problem of the EU, it's rather a problem of...
It's a domestic problem.
It's a domestic problem in Turkey. Turks do not wish to accommodate with the rules of the club.
But in Kosovo, they are performing best in the region in terms of the economy, media freedom, the rule of law, corruption. The progress that they've had has been significant. You compare to Serbia, which is backsliding in pretty much every single area and doesn't even really seem to want to join the EU. To me, it doesn't seem to make sense to have this candidate country who is not really fussed about joining the EU, who is backsliding in all areas. And you have another country that desperately wants to be a part of the European Union, has made significant progress, but is being held back.
Well, the only thing I may reiterate is that it is not the lack of recognition by Greece that keeps Kosovo away from the European Union.
Serbia.
It is the issue with Serbia. The European Union is reluctant to admit member states that have open issues with neighbors.
Yes.
And this is a fact. I mean,
Yes.
I do not say that this should be the rule, that this is right or wrong, but it is the way it is. You cannot go to elections, to European elections, and tell the European public opinion that you will bring Ukraine in immediately, and because simply this implies that the European Union will find itself at war
With Russia.
with Russia. I take
Yes.
the worst case scenario, which is Ukraine. Of course, in Kosovo, it's not an open conflict, but it is a conflict that is there and might flare up any moment. So as long as the two sides do not agree to settle their difference, which is not it's not that difficult,
The EU
they
might
accept
disagree
the
with you.
compromise, they will help themselves.
Now, I want to ask you one last question, touching on the challenging relations between Albania and Greece, which we touched on previously. Do you see things improving any time in the future between the two countries? Do you see any of these issues being resolved or them being able to move past them in any way?
Absolutely. There is a huge potential for developing economic, political, and cultural ties between develop further the existing ties on all these domains between Greece and Albania. The problem is President Rama, who, for very selfish domestic political reasons, is trying to prevent the improvement of relationship between Greece and Albania. Greece, usually, we are not. We have a lot of patience and understanding, but there is a red line which we cannot, we are not ready to, and we will never be ready to accept. I mean, there is a Greek minority in Albania. Its property rights and its existence shall be respected. It has been the policy of all nationalistic governments in Tirana to use the minority issue and to stir up enmity between Albanians and Greeks, which can live together very happily. And we have a big, sizable community of Albanian immigrants in Greece, which with whom we are living very well. And many people have dual nationality. At the level of society, there is no real issue. At the level of political elites, I think that Tirana have to readjust their course, because Greece cannot see what we can do more. I mean, ignore the fate and the welfare of our fellow Greeks in Albania. It's out of question. I don't think the Greek governments are willing or can take the risk to ignore what the fate of Greeks in Albania is.
It's complex. I think, to be fair, there are issues on both sides which need to be resolved here. And I think there is an element of stubbornness from political leaders on both sides. Speaking as someone on the outside, I think there are bilateral issues which need to be resolved, although I have no doubt that there is a lot of that Balkan stubbornness involved as well, not giving in when perhaps they could do, not being prepared to compromise and sort of using things for political purposes. But I do think that, as I said, there are issues on both sides here. I don't want to cause a diplomatic spat between the two countries.
Well, we have a lot of proverbs saying that Albanians are stubborn in Greece. That does not mean that we are not stubborn ourselves.
Yeah, we say the same about you.
Yeah. Myself, from my mother's side, 25% I'm of Albanian origin. So Greeks and Albanians go blend very well together in spite of their mutual stubbornness. But I don't think there are real issues between the two countries. There are issues that politicians, especially Albanian politicians, have invented. Greece does not have any claims over Albanian territory, does not have any ambitions. The only thing we wish is to have good relationship and an open frontier like the frontier between Belgium and the Netherlands or Belgium and France. That is feasible and can be easily achieved if there is political will. The idea that the Hoxha regime has, communist regime, that Greece will invade Albania, it does not hold any water for decades, since
for many years.
Over the last 40 years, yes, it has been, it's out of question. We do not wish to invade an inch of Albanian territory.
I'm relieved to hear
I don't think Albania wishes to invade Greek territory. So there is no reason, real reason, for the two countries not to go well together. The Albanians have to take care of the issue themselves in Tirana and during the next elections. If they elect another government, I think that it would be a good thing.
Well,
the whole political spectrum in Greece is in favor of improving our relationship with Tirana, but we cannot do it, at the expense of the interests of Albania, the Greek minority of Albania.
Let's see. Let's hope things improve one way or another, both between Albania and Greece and in the wider region as well. Georgios, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I also invited Angelos Syrigos, an MP from Greece's ruling party, New Democracy. Good afternoon, Angelos. Thank you for joining me today.
It is a pleasure. Happy New Year.
And to you as well. Let's kick things off. So I want to understand, can you explain sort of in a nutshell for our viewers who may not know the long history, why does Greece not recognize Kosovo?
Okay. Greece is one of the 5 EU member states that do not recognize Kosovo's unilateral declaration of independence since 2008. The reason is that we consider as a basic principle of our policy the territorial integrity and independence of states, and that is the reason that we support dialogue between the two sides, the Serbia and Kosovo, and we want a normalization of relations with Kosovo in order to see what we're going to do. We want something to be acceptable by both sides. This is our principle.
Now, in a situation where Serbia has sort of, on one hand, they say they want to engage in dialogue, but then domestically, President Alexander Vučić says we're never going to recognize Kosovo. Do you think that this approach of sort of waiting for Kosovo and Serbia to sort things out might take a very long time or might not work at all?
Well, in spite of the fact that we do not formally recognize Kosovo, we still maintain strong ties with Kosovo. That means that in Pristina, we have established a diplomatic mission, which is accredited by the UN MIC liaison office in Pristina, and we participate in the EU civilian mission, EULEX, as well as in the NATO mission, K4 in Kosovo. That means the fact that we do not recognize Kosovo does not mean that we do not have any relations with the Kosovan authorities. Actually, we are one step before recognizing Kosovo.
And this is my next question. So the Deputy Prime Minister of Kosovo, Besnik Bislimi, told me in an interview just before Christmas that Kosovo knows very well what it would take for Greece to take that next step, but he wouldn't tell me what that was. So I want to ask you, in your view, what would it take? You know, you mentioned dialogue, etc., but that aside, is there any other scenario or situation where Greece could take that next step towards recognition?
Well, as I said, our principle is to support peace, stability, and development in Southeast Europe. There is a serious problem in our area. In the past, we called it, they tried, to change the name, and they were speaking about Southeastern Europe. Then they are speaking about Western Balkans. We do not want this term to be synonymous with instability, with violence, with war. We support constructive political approach on this issue. And that's why we want to promote development and stability in the Balkans. And we strongly believe in the EU-facilitated dialogue process between Belgrade and Pristina. For us, it is very important. I do not think that we're going to change our view, our position on Kosovo. If I remember well, our Prime Minister Mitsotakis last year in February 2022 stated that we will not change our position in Kosovo, but we strongly support the continuation of the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia. And we want normalization of relations between the two sides.
We talk about stabilization, and you talk about the importance of the need for stabilization in the region, especially in the current geopolitical context. But I think it's fair to say that Serbia have perhaps not demonstrated a huge amount of stable behavior, especially over the last couple of months. What happens with the opposition leader there recently, the elections, the injuring of NATO troops back in the summer. There have been a number of issues, and people have said, maybe the EU is being a little soft on Serbia. What's Greece's view on this?
Okay, let me tell you the final stage of what we expect from Western Balkans. We want all countries of the Western Balkans to become part of the European Union, and therefore solve many of these issues that you have just mentioned. We are supporting EU initiatives on this issue. And we do not believe that violence can solve problems in general, can solve any problems. And the final step will be participation of all Western Balkan states to the European Union. That's how all these problems are going to be solved. Once upon a time, all these states were part of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was dissolved. Now the aim is to have all these countries in the European Union under totally different circumstances in comparison with what was Yugoslavia, under freedom, under different economic and social situation. And that's how these issues are going to be solved.
Is by bringing everybody together. I wanted to go back a step. I was asking about what is behind Greece's non-recognition. Is this, is for people who may not be familiar with the area, is this to do with national issues as well? You have Muslim majority in Thrace, you have issues with Turkey, you have the Cypriot issue as well with the occupied north there, and obviously the links between Greece and Cyprus. Are you concerned that a recognition of Kosovo may set a precedent at a national level for issues sort of within Greece with Turkey, etc.?
There is a decision by the International Court of Justice on this issue, which says that Kosovo does not represent a precedent for recognition in other circumstances where we have the cessation of a part of a state which becomes another state. From the other point of view, we have many problems, for example, with the situation between Ukraine and Russia and the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And what happened with Russia and Crimea, because the problem for us is the respect for territorial integrity and independence of states. That's why I said from the first moment that the solution will come after dialogue between the two countries and a treaty, a peace treaty, an agreement between Serbia and Kosovo. That's how these issues are solved. There is no, in international law, there is no solution by one state only.
I want to ask as well, obviously, I don't know, do you think that the problematic relationship between Greece and Albania, they're not particularly getting on very well at the moment. Does this have any impact on Kosovo recognition? Should Albania be doing more to help Kosovo in this process? Is that a factor as well?
These are two totally different issues. I want to remind you that in August last year, there was a meeting between the Balkan states. The Prime Minister of Kosovo was invited and he was there in Athens. And whereas the Albanian Prime Minister was not invited due to the problems that are created and are connected with the rule of law, the rights of minorities, respect of human rights in general, etc. It has nothing to do, the situation between Greece and Albania, with the recognition of Kosovo.
Okay.
These are two totally different issues. The case between Greece and Albania has to do with the rule of law exclusively.
And obviously that's to do with minorities, Freddie Beleri, and we have the maritime border issue as well. Now, my last question for you regarding Spain. It was quite unexpected, in my view, that they did this sort of U-turn, because I remember under a year ago, the foreign minister was adamant that they were not going to be accepting passports. And then there was this very quick U-turn. In your view, what was behind that? Is it political pressure from the EU? Is it a change in local politics in Spain to do with Catalonia? Is it to do with the fact they were the only non-recognizer who wasn't recognizing the passports? Or is it a combination of different factors? Or are they perhaps going to be next to recognize Kosovo, in your view?
I think it was a combination of issues. It has to do with internal politics as well. The fact that they have accepted, well, there was an agreement of the government with Catalonia, with the people, the Catalans who wanted independence. Furthermore, the fact that Spain was an exception in the European Union. All the other countries were accepting passports. So all these things were taken together. And that's why we reached this result.
Could they be next in line for recognition? Can you speculate or no?
No.
Thank you very much, Angelos. Thank you for your time and for your insights on this. Last week, Euronews broadcast my documentary on the life of Albanians in Brussels. I went to Brussels, I interviewed a number of migrants who've called the country home for decades, as well as visiting an Albanian cultural centre and an Albanian restaurant. Now, I was delighted to get a message from Egbert Leichert, a Belgian Member of Parliament and a member of the Open VLD, who enjoyed the show, both due to his family links to Albania and the fact he's president of the friendship group between Belgian Parliament on one side and the Albanian Parliament and Macedonian Parliament on the other. So I decided to invite him to Inside Albania. Good afternoon, Egbert.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, Alice.
Thank you for joining me today. It's a pleasure, and it was really great to have that message from you and that we were able to connect in this way.
Well, as you said, I am at this moment the president of the friendship group between Belgian Parliament and Albanian Parliament and North Macedonian Parliament. So I follow a bit the news in the country as well, what is happening. I must say sometimes in Belgium and in Western Europe, there's a lack of attention for what's happening in the Western Balkans. And I think the region will play an important role the coming years because we have the accession talks with the EU. So I think sometimes there's a lack of attention, but I try to be informed as well as I can about what's happening in the region.
Great. Now, the first thing I want to ask you about, as I discovered on my trip, there is a huge Albanian population, both Kosovar Albanian and Albanian, in Brussels and in Belgium as a whole. And I wanted to ask you, what is your perception, your visibility of the Albanian community? One thing I was surprised about as well is how long some people have been there. You know, they're not necessarily recent migrants. So how have people integrated? What have your interactions been with the Albanian community?
Well, let's say most of Albanians here, and there is a larger community than Belgians think, because it is a community that is not always so prominent in the streets, but they are very well present. And of course, with my family link, I know some Albanians, so sometimes you hear the language around Brussels and in numerous other cities. I think most of Albanians here keep a low profile, but they often work like in sectors like construction or technical services. Of course, we know 20 years ago when the first migrants came here, of course, there's some prejudice about the first generation that came because often you have cases, court cases as well about yes, people with not so good intentions also that are active in the country, which is too bad for the image, because I know a lot of Albanians and most of them just do their best here to integrate, live here very well and are respected members of our Belgian community. So we are happy they are here.
In fact, you were talking about them being so well integrated. On my first visit to Brussels, I found a coffee shop and I sat down, I ordered a coffee. It was an Italian coffee shop. And when I opened my wallet to pay and I had some lek in there, and the guy was like, "Oh, where did you get that?" And I was like, "Well, I live in Albania, you know." And it turned out he wasn't actually Italian, he was Albanian, but it was sort of promoting the restaurant, the cafe as Italian. Is this something that happens a lot, do you think?
Yes, it happens a lot if you know the language or you know how to recognize an Albanian. You see them more than you would think. So, and it's true what you said. There are a lot of Italian restaurants or even cafes that in fact are owned by Albanians. But also we are here in Parliament buildings, center of Brussels. The restaurant you visited, Alba, is just around the corner here. But the other bar where most members of Parliament on Thursday evening go out for a drink after work is also owned by an Albanian. He comes from Sturga, North Macedonia, but he is from origin Albanian. So actually, if you know, you notice it everywhere.
You are president currently of the friendship group between the Belgian and the Albanian Parliament and the North Macedonian as well. What does this friendship group entail? What's your role as president? What's the purpose? Tell us more about it.
Well, these friendship groups exist between almost all parliaments in the world. So actually, the way you fulfill this presidency depends a bit on the person. Sometimes there are missions, official missions that are organized from one country to the other. Then you visit the parliament of the other country. And often there are discussions about numerous themes like economic issues, diplomatic issues. That is mostly what it is used for. Now, during the term that I have been president, it's now 4 years, we have not had an official mission, but with a team of colleagues among the president of our Senate and other members of parliament, I informally visited the parliament of Albania 2 years ago. And I must say also the contact with both ambassadors, the Albanian, Suela Yanina, and North Macedonia in Brussels is very good. We have a very good link. And when there are issues concerning Albanians or that are important for the country, it is also a way to have an informal diplomacy and to put themes on the agenda that are important for both countries.
And I want to tackle something that you briefly mentioned earlier, and that is the reality of issues with organised crime involving Albanians, drug trafficking. This is something we can't avoid. It's something the press do pounce on, I must say, but it is an issue now. And I want to understand, what's the reality in Belgium with this? I mean, I know, you know, that the majority of Albanians everywhere in the world are regular members of society, but there are some issues that prevail. How can we combat these issues? What's the situation in Belgium? And can your friendship group play a role in this as well?
Well, it's indeed a concern because, of course, 99% of the people are, of course, good people with good intentions. But in every society, you always have others who cross lines. And unfortunately, Belgium is a bit vulnerable on this issue of drugs mafia because we have the port of Antwerp in our country. And the port of Antwerp is unfortunately often used for drugs trafficking. Recently, our Belgian justice, but with the collaboration of the Albanian justice, I should point that out, that there is a good collaboration. There were several gangs or mafia clans that were actually investigated through transcriptions of WhatsApp messages that were de-encrypted by government in an investigation. And it led to a huge investigation, and there were some Albanian groups discovered. Recently, we also made a treaty with Dubai to have somebody with Albanian nationality who was running a drug mafia empire from there, but was concerning Belgian society. He is now in Belgian prison. We were able to make an extraditory treaty with Dubai to get him here. So unfortunately for the reputation, of course, people in Belgium read this in the news. They see an Albanian national again in front of court. It's not something, it's too bad because I know so many Albanians here in Brussels and in Belgium in general. They simply work, they do their best, they are good citizens. And of course, for them, it leads to some prejudice. Of course, once you get to know the people, it's better. And also, I must say, what helps a lot too, Albania is now being discovered as a real tourist destination. As people know, I have a link with the country. I get a mass of questions about which route people should take to visit Albania. It started last year. And this year it will go even higher because everybody that went is positive on the country. So I think that could change things really a lot.
You know, it happened with my colleagues in Belgium when I first started working there with colleagues in Belgium about 3 years ago. And they were like, oh, you're in Albania. And it was sort of, strange choice. Now, last summer, I had colleagues calling me, oh, I'm going backpacking, or we've just booked our honeymoon in Albania, or which hotel can I stay in? So things really, really changed from sort of, oh, Albania to where's the best place to go? Can you put me in contact with someone who can take me on a tour? So this was nice to see people's opinions and perceptions changing. Now, I want to move on to Belgium. Belgium has just assumed the presidency of the European Council. Congratulations on that. How can this impact EU's accession path? Can it impact? Will it impact? What can we achieve in terms of accession in the next 6 months? Is there anything?
Well, for us, this is really an important event. We also have a Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo. He's from my party, a colleague of mine. And Alexander De Croo is somebody with an international profile, with an authority. So actually, the fact that he will be the president of the council at this point is a good thing, I think, because he has a lot of credibility with his colleagues. And there are a lot of themes on the agenda that are fundamental for the stability and peace in Europe. First of all, of course, the war in Ukraine and the support package we should give to Ukrainians to resist the Russians trying to occupy the country. I think it will be important for us to make sure that there is a consensus that we keep on supporting Ukraine against Russia. Second, there is the Gaza-Israel conflict, where Europeans are very divided on how they want to put their or which point of view they should take. And I think third, that is important for you and for everybody watching, the enlargement of the EU will be on the agenda as well, and the road to the accession. And I think that will be really something to debate, because often I see that the Western Balkans are considered as a package, a group of countries, 6 countries, to be debated together. I think actually that is a big risk for Albania or for North Macedonia, because these countries are a lot more ahead in reforms they have done. And of course, we don't know. We see the tensions in Serbia. We see what's happening at the Kosovo-Serbian border. I hope this all doesn't interfere with a clear accession path for countries that have done reforms. So these are important issues on the agenda the coming months.
And actually, I was going to ask you about that. I interviewed the Deputy Prime Minister of Kosovo, Besnik Beslimi, just before Christmas, and he said, under Spain, nothing really happened with our EU membership application. As expected, Spain doesn't recognise, but he expressed hope under the Belgian presidency that things may move along a bit. Do you think this is a possibility? Might we see some movement with Kosovo's membership bid?
Well, indeed, I think we know for Spain this is a delicate matter, because they have some regions who are looking for autonomy or even separating from Spain. For them, the Kosovo issue is sensitive. For us, this is less a problem, of course. And we know we are deeply concerned also about what is happening in Serbia and the Russian influence we see there, because I always state here, because I will deposit a resolution on the Kosovo-Serbia issues the coming week in Belgian Parliament, because there is a lack of attention for what is happening there. We should know very well, or be aware, that if we do not have a good dialogue and a clear, fair path for Western Balkan countries to access the EU, that you will actually push some of the Western Balkan countries to the east. And that would be really a pity. It is the remaining region that is not a part of EU. And those that are really pointed to the West and embrace our values, like Albania, like North Macedonia, you should give them a clear and fair path.
You mentioned something just now about a resolution about Kosovo and Serbia. Is that coming up?
Yes, we are drafting the resolution at this stage, and probably during the course of next week, we will deposit it here in Belgian Parliament. And the reason why I do this is because I noticed that in Western Europe and in my country, in Belgium, there is a very limited attention to what is happening there. We are in the middle of a war with Russia, who is an autocracy, not a democracy, and we should be very well aware that with other countries like China and Iran, actually they are challenging Western democracy, and as long as it was only Ukraine and Russia, the attention of the West was on helping Ukraine. Now there's the second conflict, Gaza-Israel, where the attention is divided. We know very well that it would be in favor of the agenda of Russia if there would be a military conflict or an aggressive conflict between Kosovo and Serbia. And I think Western Europeans underestimate what the agenda is. So that is why I'm depositing this resolution. I will ask attention for it, because I feel it somewhere coming, that with the tensions that there have been the last year, it is very well possible that this would explode at some point. And then we have 3 conflicts. Amongst one in our backyard, really in our neighboring backyard in Western Balkans, that would really be a danger for the whole European Union and for the stability of the region.
Do you think the West, the EU, has been a bit soft on Serbia? I mean, we've seen the elections on the 17th of December. What happened after that? I mean, the students who were arrested, some still in custody. We have a situation where an opposition politician was apparently kidnapped and beaten. And I see Kosovo still under measures, but I see Serbia with nothing. And I cannot help but think that Brussels is perhaps, and I say Brussels as in the European Union, the Commission, is not taking it as seriously as they should be. Do you think a bit more Serbia, the threat, the issues need to be given a bit more attention?
Yeah, I think it's clear, because as I follow Euronews, of course, and I follow you too on X, I saw the arrest and what happened with the opposition leader in Serbia. But for instance, here in Belgian media, there is hardly any. I have not seen any news report about it. So actually, I think in Western Europe that there's really a lack of attention for what's happening there. And actually, the same thing has has happened in the past with Ukraine, because Russia occupied the Crimea, and then we thought it would be finished. Putin would stop there, but he didn't stop there. He continued. And after we had seen the attacks of 7th of October of Hamas in Israel, where we know very well that Iran played a role. So we know in the favor of the agenda of these countries, it would be to destabilize the Western Balkans and Kosovo in particular, with the tensions in the north close to the Serbian border. So I think we really need to learn lessons from Ukraine, from Gaza, to not underestimate where the next conflict could arise, and that it is up to Europe to speak in one voice, because that is already one problem mostly, and to have an attention here to guarantee safety and security in the region, or everybody will be the victim. Not only the Western Balkans, but also the EU itself. This is our backyard. We are in the same kitchen, the one in one side, and
we're surrounded by the EU as well. You know, we're surrounded by member states.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing this resolution, and thank you as well for that, because I mean, behind the scenes with my colleagues in Brussels and here, we appreciate the firm stances that Belgium has taken on a number of international issues, the Gaza-Israel war being one of them. And I look forward to seeing this resolution as well, because like you said, I don't think there is enough attention, and enough understanding of exactly what's going on and whose hands are involved in this situation. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, and I'll send you a copy of the resolution when it's ready.
Wonderful, thank you. And next time I'm in Brussels, we'll go for an Albanian coffee.
To take you out then. Have a nice day.
Mirapafshim. That's all for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. You can watch Inside Albania every Saturday at 5 o'clock on Euronews Albania, on our YouTube channel, or across all major podcasting platforms. Till next week, Mirapafshim.